Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to go heavy Pelicans, talk a lot about the Saints. Of course, your phone calls are welcome. Got a great panel for you tonight, as we always do. Bradley Handwerger, freelance journalist, joins us back on the show, along with my good friend Rick Gaille of Sportsnola.com and WGSO Radio. And gentlemen, thanks for being with us tonight. Been looking forward to this all week. And we actually got something really good to talk about now with the Pelicans and their move last night. But we always start off, want to let the audience know a little bit about what's going on with you. And Bradley, tell the folks a little bit about what's going on in your life.
Just trying to work my way through physical therapy school. Yes. One day at a time. Survive in advance. That's my motto these days.
Survive in advance.
But also, occasionally writing when I can. I'll have a column on your site on Saturday before the game, and tweeting and being a sarcastic man as usual.
And it's also been stringing for the AP as well.
And stringing for the AP.
Our good friend Brett Martell and yourself. Coach, good to have you back. Again, you do a fantastic job with the Three Tailgaters. I look forward to it every single Saturday. And of course, you've done a great job with Sportsnola. Tell us a little bit about everything that's going on with you.
Well, the biggest thing right now is the Three Tailgaters show Saturday from 10 to 12 on WGSO 990 AM with Ken Trahan and Ed Daniels. We had completed my first year anyway with Prep Recruiting Insider at WHNO TV 20, working with Renee Nato,
great guy.
An adventure in fine journalism. I have a great time with him. And doing some writing with Sportsnola, getting ready, heading to the golf season now as well. So having a good time. Sometimes I find it remarkable how little I get done every day, but having a good time doing little.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, speaking of golf, Zurich Classic next week. What do you think about the field so far?
It's shaping up quite nicely, and what we're finding out is the depth of the PGA Tour right now, golf worldwide, is just unbelievable, and that's what made Jordan Spieth's accomplishment last week so outstanding. Not only did he tie the Masters record, but he did it on a course that was harder than the last time that the record was set. It was Tiger-proofed, if you remember, after Woods set the record. But also the depth of the field right now is unbelievable. The quality of the game from top to bottom has never been better, and the Zurich Classic, if the weather will cooperate, is going to be outstanding.
Right. That depth will translate into very good players being in the field this year?
Yes, it's shaping up pretty nicely. Right. Looking at the list today, a dozen or so major championship winners and lots in the top end of the world right now.
It's always been and Bradley, you know this from covering it for so long, it's always been a kind of a stepping off point for some of the younger players on the tour. A lot of younger players win their first tournament here in New Orleans.
It's a course that I think that maybe players look at it and they're like, all right, we're coming off the Masters, we want to rest a little bit, so they kind of stick back from it. But it gives the younger guys a chance to come out and play a really nice course, a well-run tournament, and one that the fans love. And I think because of that, the players who come here love coming here. And a lot of them return year after year, and I think that is a testament to the tournament itself.
Yeah. What about the course itself? Again, it's been modified, trying to be able to adhere to what some of the players have said about the course in the past. Your thoughts?
A lot of it has to do with golf course maturity. Because when you first design a golf course, it's always harder than it's supposed to be. I mean, the ground is firmer. It's not as fine-tuned as it is as the course grows in and matures. And then when you threw Katrina on top of it and killing hundreds of trees on the golf course, and they had to restart that process over again. So especially with a Pete Dot course, when it's too firm, it gets to be almost unplayable at times because all the greens in this area have to be elevated because of drainage.
Yes.
And so balls were bouncing all over the place and frustrated some players early on. That's much less the case now, and the course is set up for good scoring, and that's usually what they get.
Well, nobody does it like we do, Bradley. I mean, again, you look at the way we've kind of transformed this PGA event here in New Orleans with the music, the food, the cocktails, everything else that goes along with it. And now you look around the PGA, so many other tour stops are mimicking what we do.
Well, we do everything well, and we have fun doing it. I say we do everything well. There are plenty of things we in New Orleans don't do well.
Politics.
Road paving.
Yes.
But sports-wise, you look at just it's kind of our attitude at life is we in the city just like to enjoy ourselves, and we're just trying to get to the next party.
Yep.
I go to school so I can get to the next party. You go to work for the day so you can have fun the next night. So that attitude, and you take it to a golf course, and you take it to a tournament that really wants to have fun.
Yes.
And you see other tournaments want to mimic it because they realize this is what the fans want. As much as they want the players to enjoy the course and have fun, the fans have to enjoy it as well to come back out, and we do it well.
Yeah, and for a long time, the players love coming here, bringing their wives. Same weekend as Jazz Fest. Right. They go out on a fishing tour. They get a chance to see, obviously, historic New Orleans. So there are a lot of things that go into this tour. I am a little disappointed sometimes when some of the major winners don't come here, though, because I'm one of those ones that believes there should be a rule in the PGA that at least over a 4 to 5 year period, you just have to go to every stop at least once.
And that would be a logical thought if it wasn't for the fact that the players, even as much as the top ones make, are independent contractors. So it's hard to legislate things like that, even though that would indeed be logical. But as Bradley was saying, nobody throws an event like New Orleans. It's an event-driven city.
Yes.
People love having one event after the other, and that's how you have to compete for players, because all the tournaments go around all year recruiting players to come to that tournament. And New Orleans has a lot to offer.
Right.
But I think to a large part, what I like to see, Phil Mickelson here year after year in, year out, absolutely. Rory here year in, year out, absolutely. But you know what? I'm of the mind that the players who want to be here, bring them on. If they don't want to be here,
right,
that's their loss. We're not losing out. I think you're still getting the people out at Desert Classic to watch it. You're going to get out at Desert Classic to watch it.
Yeah.
And I think the players will appreciate that.
And the title sponsor is one of the best. I mean, Zurich is stuck with this city, stuck with this tournament, and it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen within the next 5 years or so.
Right.
If it will stay at the TPC of Louisiana, if ultimately it will head down to City Park with that new PGA-style course coming on board.
I just wonder if it ends up moving to City Park and it's Jazz Fest time. What happens? I mean, the noise, I don't want to call it pollution because I love Jazz Fest and I love music. It's not pollution to me, but for maybe golfers it would be. The noise pollution, the parking, I just think it would be an interesting New Orleans two-step.
That's a great point. We already now have to deal with the Indy track that's out there, and I wonder if they're going to be silent on the weekend when these golfers are out there. Let's talk a little Pelicans. Guys, I thought it was the most defining game for the franchise, and again, one that I think kind of sets up the future of the franchise here in New Orleans. When you look at what happened last night, this team needed to take the next step. And I heard Monty Williams saying throughout the last couple of weeks that their goal was to have a winning season. They did that. But I never felt, and those that have seen this program on an ongoing basis, I've listened to my radio show, know that I've been on board with it's playoffs or bust for both Dell and Monty. And again, last night was a huge hump, a huge hurdle to get over for this team. And hopefully it's going to endear them to the New Orleans sports fan. And because, again, I think they've been kind of an afterthought in the New Orleans sports psyche because they haven't won. And even this season, it's been so up and down, especially in the beginning of the season. I think we saw last night everything a New Orleans crowd can be and everything this team can be going forward. Bradley, your thoughts?
I have been, and you know this well, one of the biggest detractors of Dell Demps and Monty Williams. But what they've done this season in the face of the injuries that they've had to deal with, in the face of, the stiff competition for the last really 3 weeks of the season to get to this point, they've done a really fine job. And I think it was a closer game in the second half last night than it was in the first half. But I think the way they came out tells me that Monty had a good plan coming in, had them ready, and had them prepared for this. And you talk about the team really kind of setting themselves up for the future. I think, Tyreek Evans is played well. Eric Gordon has done more than I think any of us ever thought he would do.
Sure.
Omer Asik came in, can't hit a free throw, but he can grab a rebound, which is huge. But it's all Anthony Davis. And what we have in Anthony Davis in the city now is a player that the city can love because he's a player who loves the city. You talk to him and you get the sense that he's not one who really is going to search for the spotlight. He's going to let whatever happens and enjoy his time here and enjoy his time playing basketball, which is what he wants to do. So in many ways, it took a while, but the Chris Paul shenanigans, the trade, whatever you want to call it, ended up pretty well for this team.
Oh, well, that when that ping pong ball went the right way and AD came to town, it was kind of a panacea for all that. Coach, what can you add?
And AD and Monty Williams are growing up together.
Yeah.
And I've said from the beginning of the season that the playoffs were a necessity, even though if they'd have had this same record and not made the playoffs, let's say they in Oklahoma City reversed the situation, you'd still have to call this season successful because of
successful enough to save their jobs?
No.
Did I say that? No, I said it would be a successful season. And you know, I'm a bit sensitive to this. If they'd have had the same record and not made the playoffs, did it mean that they did that much worse of a job? And I started an exercise with Ken and Ed 3 years ago, that at the end of the year we would go through the roster and see how many NBA players we really had on the team here. And 3 years ago we had 2. The rest of them really weren't NBA players. And then last year, significantly more. And if you look at it now, in large part to what they did in the middle of the year.
Yeah, no doubt.
They changed 25% of the roster in the middle of the year, and they turn out to be NBA players, like real NBA players, not just guys in uniforms. You know, and I also find in the NBA it's remarkable how long it takes for a team to come together in the beginning of the year. Oh, you know, by Christmas they'll get it together. But yet, if they get you in the middle of the year, you got to come in and make a contribution right away. So I don't know if they wouldn't have made the playoffs with the same record, but there's no question they've improved, and you have to give credit where credit is due. Monty Williams has improved as a head coach. He was not ready to be a head coach when he got the job. But I also heard this from Coach Krzyzewski last week. They were asking him on an interview about Jahlil Okafor and his prospects in the NBA. He says, let me tell you something, it's all in what team he goes to. I had a chance to work with Monty Williams and Anthony Davis with the USA national team. And if he can go to a team that has a coach like Monty Williams, he will thrive in the NBA because the relationship he has with Anthony Davis and the work they put in together and the improvement that I see in the great coaching job that Monty Williams does. And he does as a technician of the game in teaching the skills of the game. He's outstanding, but he's just learning to become a head coach.
Well, Coach, I would agree with you on that. And again, there was a learning curve. You remember George Shinn, Cash Strap, Dell Demps, Monty Williams came in on a cheap. They have had the opportunity to be able to stick even through the new regime. But one thing you can say, look, at times the coaching mistakes, they had the entire city, anybody that was watching these games in game and get out, just scratching their head. Timeouts, combinations, the ability to be able to substitute at certain times. I mean, Monty left a lot to be desired at times. Last night, I think, was his best coaching job ever, no doubt about it. But one thing that you can say about this team, this coaching staff is, they develop players. Look right down the line. Anthony Davis development. You can look at, again, Tyreke Evans with the jump shot now. Eric Gordon changing his whole game. Not a slasher anymore. Can't get to the basket. Doesn't have that athleticism anymore. But all of a sudden, he's a knockdown shooter. I mean, you go right down the line. One thing you knew they could do is they're very good at teaching. The question for me has always been in-game decisions. And last night, I thought he was at his very best, the best he's ever been here in New Orleans.
Well, I thought they made a decision when things started getting tight after that 21-point lead to let's just play through Anthony Davis. And you could tell the message was loud and clear with the players, because I think in the past that hasn't been what's happened. You look at Tyreke Evans and he will take the ball himself and go to the hoop and then throw it God knows where. But last night you saw them going through AD a lot more than I think you have in the past. I think we saw not just the coaching staff grow this season, you saw the players and the team grow, and I think you saw the team in so many instances of similar instances in the past where all of a sudden you've got a good team coming back on the Pelicans like they did last night. They would have thrown in the towel. They would have gotten down, would have started making pressure errors. But last night, even though it got down to 4 points, they stuck with what they were doing, and it came out really positive in the way that they envisioned it before the game. And I think that's growth on the players' part.
as a guy that's an educator, as a guy that's taught not just in the school system, but again, taught young men how to play the game of football, talk about that teaching aspect of this coaching staff.
Oh, it's the ability to react instinctively without having to think, and to be able to do that in a coordinated fashion takes a tremendous amount of work and concentration and dedication by not only the coaching staff, but the players as well. And what we've seen is that the entire team has grown in confidence, specifically because they were able to win games when Anthony Davis was hurt, or stay in games when he would have a bad start or a bad middle of the game. The rest of the team would keep things in order till they could come through at the end. So the whole team has a lot more confidence. They're playing the game more and more in what I call the right way. You talked this whole week, Eric, I've listened about the assist to point ratio, the basket ratio. And it's more than just wanting to share the ball, because wanting to pass the ball has to be a coordinated effort with the person catching the ball, that they've got to make cuts at the right time, at the right angle. You know, if you're dribbling the ball and the ball is going down and then you break and get open, they can't throw you the ball at that particular time, for example. So there's a lot of coordination that has to go on, and repetition of the right things, so that instinctively you are reacting instead of having to consciously react. And once again, changing a quarter of the roster and still being able to maintain and grow on that shows you how this team has developed to play the game the right way.
Such a great point about changing the roster. And I've talked about it on the radio show. We've talked about it on this show. Where would this team be right now without Cole, Coupon, and Cunningham? I mean, literally, when you look how deplorable that bench was at the beginning of the season, that bench scared no one, okay? I mean, it was really laughable. But you got to give Dell Demps a lot of credit, with really not a lot of assets to be able to move, the ability, again, to be able to jump in on those multiple team deals, to be able to make the salary situation work in terms of a trade. And these guys have kind of transformed this team. They have a legitimate bench then. You add the fact now that Drew Holiday comes back, Ryan Anderson comes back, all of a sudden now you've got a fairly deep team.
Well, I'm really impressed with the addition of Quincy Pondexter. I think here's a guy who we saw him, obviously the Pelicans, then the Hornets drafted him. And you saw athleticism, but he was a young kid who was just almost just happy to be here in a sense. And he goes to Memphis, and maybe he's around some different players and different coaches, and he grows up, and he's back here now, and I think he understands the game and the way it works and what his strengths and what his weaknesses are. And I think the addition of him really, really helped this team off the bench. And Norris Cole, you know, it was a good pickup. I think he's better than maybe I thought he would be. But Pondexter, to me, is the guy who's been most consistent of the two. That I almost feel like I can count on him night in and night out, coming off the bench and giving really good minutes.
Cole is able to spread his wings a little bit more here in New Orleans than he was, obviously, with the superstars he played with in Miami.
Right.
And you saw that last night, especially. You know, he's been in big games, he's been in championship games, and this did not faze him. And when this team was getting a little bogged down, he took control. And again, just each one of these guys, you know, at times, you know, Quincy Pondexter coming in with his attitude, and you saw the change in attitude of this team, you know, sharing the basketball. As you mentioned, Coach, a couple times, doing things the right way. I mean, think about this. You go back to the East Coast road trip where they lost to Philly, Boston, and the New York Knicks. I said it on this show and on my radio show. Monty shouldn't have got on the plane. Right. Okay, they should have fired him before he got on the plane. Now, Adrian Wojciechowski said that in the beginning of the season that both Dell Demps and Monty Williams were told that, again, it was playoffs or bust. You go to the playoffs or you're going to lose your job. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that was always my feeling throughout the season. But again, they were able to overcome injuries. They were able to overcome losing 13 games to sub-500 teams. So ultimately, again, they have progressed as a team. Right. And last night, I think they took that next step that was needed for the franchise.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. With the addition of those three players, the team plays faster, plays without hesitation. As strange as it seems, getting new players, they play fast, they play with energy. It's lifted not only the confidence but the energy of the entire team. And when you this is what I ask of a coaching staff. Number one, do the players improve? and certainly they improve, as you've alluded to perfectly. Are they consistent? This team has not been consistent. They've been all over the lot.
Consistently inconsistent.
Yeah, because I remember
Right.
they had lost to Philadelphia that same week you're talking about. They're getting ready to go to Toronto and then the Knicks. And I mentioned to Ken on the radio, I said, now watch them go to Toronto and win and then go to New York and lose.
Right.
Ken goes, no, there's no way that could happen. Well, that's exactly what happened. They beat a lot of really good teams during the course of the year. So they've been all over the place, consistent-wise. That's been a negative for them. But do they beat people that they're not supposed to beat? Do they beat people who are better than they are? And they've done that more often than you would think that they would deserve to do so. I think Coach Williams is finding out he's got to have an edge at times. All great coaches have an edge. Even the great John Wooden, who looked so saintly on the sideline, he had an edge to him that he got through to the team during the course of the week. And I think that sometimes that his calm demeanor or flatline kind of demeanor from game to game sometimes underplays what happens when they play a lesser team, but plays right into being consistent against really good teams. He's got to get a bit more of an edge. I think he found that out last night. And wasn't it great to see him as excited as he was? It was like a ton of bricks had been lifted off of his back, and he and his whole family could enjoy it right along with us.
Right.
I think to the consistency, the inconsistently consistent, consistently inconsistent, however you want to say it, that speaks to the youth of the team as much as anything. They are a team this season that played down to the level of who they were playing and up to the level of who they were playing. The next step's going to be playing consistently good, and I think the way they closed, and I think the Houston game was maybe a bit of an aberration, just a tired team on the road, but you look at how they played in the last couple of weeks, and I think they're getting to that point. They're starting to play the way they know they can play and force their game on other teams, and that's just a maturity thing.
Yeah, guys, and Brandon, I'm so glad we have you here tonight because you were one of the first that said that Dell Demps kind of put this team together like a fantasy basketball team. I've thought at times that Monty's, especially in-game decisions, left a lot to be desired. With that said, as I've mentioned, they made the playoffs. They've done what I think they needed to do to hold on to their jobs. I think they've earned the right to return. The question is now, Monty has 1 year left on his deal, as it's been reported. From what I understand, Dell Demps has a qualifying offer, which has been reported. The question is, what do you do? If you're the Pelicans brass now, are you all in on these two guys simply because you had a winning record and you're in a situation where now you've made the playoffs? Even it doesn't matter what happens in the playoffs at this point, that you've made the playoffs. You've crossed that threshold. I said on my radio show today, to me, I think a 5-year extension for both of these guys is a little too much. I don't think they've proven enough to get a 5-year extension, but I do think you can add 2 years to Monty's deal and make it a 3-year deal, and I think you can give Dell 3 years at this point and then see what they do from this point forward, and if they can continue to progress as a coaching staff and as a general manager. One of the reasons why I think it's key is you've got a situation now where Anthony Davis, he has 1 more year left on his deal, and then a qualifying offer. You can't be in a situation where maybe you're changing the coaching staff in AD's last year. You've been a detractor of both guys. Your thoughts now as we sit here today?
I'll be the first to admit that I think they've done a really good job this year, and you've seen them grow. Do I have issues with some of Monty's in-game decisions? Absolutely.
Sure.
But you're going to have problems with any coach. You're going to have different ideas of how things run. I think that now that they're in the playoffs and they've shown this improvement this year, and you've seen the relationship that Anthony and Monty have together, it would be hard not to keep that going, because I don't think Anthony's the guy who's going to say, oh, you know what, I want the limelight, I want to go to New York, I want to go to Boston, I want to go to LA.
Want to go back home to Chicago?
He likes it here.
Yep.
And I think as long as Monty is here and they're progressing as a team, Anthony's going to want to stay here. And so I think at this point, you were tied to Monty. Giving him an extension, I think, would be a grand idea. Like you said, 5 years is a lot, because let's say they all of a sudden take a step back and they go, under 500 next year. I don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
I'm just throwing out the hypothetical. Then what do? You're
locked in.
You're locked in.
Right.
So I think it's more palatable to get out of a shorter contract than a longer contract. And with Dell, I'm still not sold on Dell. Fantasy football players, fantasy basketball players, fantasy baseball players, they hit every once in a while. Could anybody have really predicted that Norris Cole was going to be this kind of player? I don't think so. I just think, yeah, his relationships with the rest of the NBA are good. I think that he made some good moves this year, but 1 year does not a trend make.
So your feeling is, should they look elsewhere in terms of upper management?
I think like
or has he earned a right?
I think, like you said, you give him something that you think is palatable, that if the relationship sours, you can get out of and get rid of easily. But a long-term contract I don't think is in his future.
I think 3 years is about right for both guys. Coach, what's your thoughts on both?
Yeah, Coach Williams needs a contract 1 year longer than Anthony Davis's to make sure you can't have a lame duck coach.
You can't.
So that would be absurd. And guess what? They're not going anywhere. This isn't college basketball or college football or college coaching where there's 150, 250 other schools that may outbid you for somebody. This is the NBA. There's only so many jobs, and they're not going to be running off anywhere or playing one team against another team in a contract thing. So I think your idea is spot on, an extension, but one that if things go south, which they do in the NBA awfully fast, at times, and we certainly don't want that to occur, but if it does, you've got to be able to get out from under it.
Right. Guys, you heard AD gushing over Monty last night. You saw the affection between the players and Monty last night. The guys individually going to him, hugging him, embracing him, happy for this next step. The team respects him. I talked about this today. The team loves him, but I don't know if the fan base at this point has that love and respect for Monty. How does he get that? Is there something he can do in the offseason? Is it just going to be winning? I mean, how does he get the fan base on his side? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to how many people are buying season tickets.
You get it by winning, and you get it by growing. I think the players love Monty because he defends them. He does what's best for the players, and the players will always side with that. From a fan's perspective, he still makes boneheaded decisions with timeouts or with substitutes, or like all of a sudden, Jimmer was in the middle of the playing time in the middle of the season, all of a sudden he's not. We have no idea why. I have ideas why, but we don't really know why. So I think the fans want to like him. I think they always want to like the coaches that are at the helm of their team, but he's got to mature even more with his decisions, his in-game decisions, and they got to win. Winning cures all.
And he's not Greg Popovich, and I think he's tried early on to be a Greg Popovich as far as his aloofness to the outside world is concerned, and he's a much more personable, has a much more expansive personality than Coach Popovich does. It works for Pop, but it doesn't work for other people.
He's got a few more rings too.
So, and that's
your own man.
That's exactly right. But I think the winning is the great elixir for sure. And as he becomes more confident in his abilities, he grows into the job, and he's continuing to grow into the job. And the players certainly love him because he makes more money for the players. What do professional players want more than anything? They want a coach who will help them make more money. And how do they make more money? By improving their skills, and he certainly has shown that he's capable of doing that.
And I think the other thing I just thought about was continue his relationship with Mike Krzyzewski. Learn from one of the, if not the greatest all-time coaches. I mean, he and John Wooden are just unbelievable what they do, or Wooden was unbelievable what he did. But, if he continues to talk with Coach Krzyzewski, if he learns from him and figures out how to manage personalities, how to make better, in-game decisions, and I think he'll be well on his way. I've never had a problem with him as the person. It's some of his decisions that I always question.
Yeah, I've always questioned the decisions as well, but man, they got to do something to get the fan base behind him. And maybe there was a big step in this last game, especially with a full arena. I think New Orleans kind of discovered, hey, there's a Pelican team and they're not that bad. Right. Okay, and I think that happened last night. But I still get it. I mean, look, literally over the last few, we had one caller, a lady that called last week that again professed her affection for Monty Williams as a coach. And look, the guy's a great guy, but at the end of the day, it's about W's and L's, and you got to be able to win, and especially at a high level like this. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Got a great panel for you tonight. Rick Gaille of WGSO Radio and Sportsnola.com. Freelance journalist Bradley Handwerger. I'm your host, Eric Asher. 866-3200 is the phone number. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll be right back. Don't move.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. WLAE is currently looking for partners to underwrite this program and other programs on our station. Underwriting on WLAE is affordable, brings exposure to your cause or company, and helps support our nonprofit mission of providing television programs that educate, inform, and inspire the viewers of Greater New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana. If you are interested in learning about program underwriting on WLAE, please contact us at 504-830-3703.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Each and every Thursday night right here on WLA with our live broadcast, 6 p.m. on Thursday nights. On Friday nights, 9 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette, and 10 o'clock right here on WLAE. So again, catch us live, catch us recorded, or set the DVR. But make sure you check us out each and every week here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Boy, Drew Holiday, man, I tell you what a difference he has made defensively, his vision, his ball handling, his floor generalship, his scoring. What a shot in the arm this guy has been for the Pelicans.
I agree. You know, Tyreek, with not having to make every decision, I think is a better Tyreek. And I do believe that Drew's a better defender than Tyreek Evans is. But it's that confidence and the whole plan that Drew brings to the floor that I think is one of the things that they needed to have back. And getting him back and getting him more minutes, I think will give them a shot to at least steal one win, at the very least, against Golden State.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. He's getting healthy at the right time. So is Anderson getting healthy at the right time. That is very, very good. I think Tyreek Evans really getting back to his roots, because when he started in the league, he was a point guard.
Right.
That's really what he is.
Yeah,
is
sure.
a shooting point guard. And it's going to be a great challenge going forward to have the two of them, because he and Drew Holiday sort of play the same position, but their styles are so different but yet complementary. And they start giving some teams some cross-match situations, because whoever's defending Tyreek doesn't want to defend on the other end of the floor. And if you cross-match defensively, then the other team's got to cross-match too, and that creates some mismatch problems with somebody besides Anthony Davis.
Yes.
So that's going to be a good combination going forward. Once again, it looks like they're cooperative to being able to do that, which is the first part of the NBA battle, is that the players must cooperate. Right. And it's going to be a challenge for the coaching staff, how to be able to use similar but different talents together.
Well, I'll say this. The mentality of both players are different. I mean, Tyreek's had to almost kind of force feed himself into realizing that when I go to the hole, I can beat my man, but sometimes instead of throwing up an awkward shot, it's a little bit easier for me to dish and to create for my teammates. It's just second nature for Drew Holiday.
Right.
That's who he is. Right. And you could see it. It's not forced like it has been for Tyreek, although you got to give Tyreek a lot of credit. He's changed his game. It helped this team while Drew Holiday was obviously on the shelf. So I agree with you. The dynamic of those two guys playing together, how's that going to work? You throw Eric Gordon in the mix now, who's changed his game. When he was a slasher, all of a sudden you got everybody going to the hole. Now a spot-up shooter, that's going to help. So, look, it's a good problem to have right now, especially against a team like Golden State.
Sure. And they're young, they're fast, they're quick, they're having fun. I think that's the biggest part of it for them is you look at San Antonio, it's an older team. They have to rest people. It's easy for the younger players to kind of keep the pace up against them. They can't do that against Golden State. Golden State's a pretty young athletic team too, but the combination of Drew and Tyreek and Eric, I think, presents a lot of matchup problems in the future if they can stay with what they're doing right now.
Yeah. Guys, if you'd asked me last week, even after they beat Golden State, if they had a chance to get in the playoffs, what would they do? I would have probably said, you know what, it's a sweep. After watching last night and seeing this team kind of come together, the fact that, again, you brought Drew Holiday and Anderson back in the mix, I think they got a legitimate shot to win 1 or 2 games in the series. Right. They're not going to win this series. If they win this series, I mean, it's like hitting the Powerball, okay?
Right.
But I think they got a legitimate chance to be in the series and then maybe win a couple games. Coach, your thoughts?
They can compete. And they've proven that over and over again throughout the course of the season against very good teams. Can they compete over 7 games? No. That would be a long shot. I think you're exactly right. But it's going to be great to watch this series because you've got Golden State, who plays the game the right way. They're exciting to watch. Not only with the great players that they have, but the way that they play the game. And the Pelicans are getting more and more that way. If they can win 2 games in this series, it would just be outstanding. But gosh, the 2 games that they have in New Orleans, virtual sellouts, I believe you were telling me today, that is going to be so exciting, and that will really start to bring the people back to follow the Pelicans.
Well, and again, conflicts, when you start talking about Game 4, and if there is a Game 6, both of those are going against Jazz Fest.
But they're night games.
Right.
And there are, some people who are going to go to Jazz Fest who will go to the Pelicans playoff game, but I think it's a somewhat dissimilar population that's going to both. And again, for for those who want to go to both, Jazz Fest ends at 7.
Yes. 866-3200. Jeremy is uptown. Jeremy, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
I have a question. Do you think that they can take Golden State to 7 games? Before you laugh at me, I want to bring this up. The Spurs was taking the 7 games with a young Golden State 2 years ago when nobody gave them a chance. And now that Golden State is the Pelicans are on a tear. They have everybody healthy. And out of the 4 games they played, one of them was barely won by Golden State when they pushed them to overtime. But now everybody's back. Do you think they could take them to 7 games? Thank you.
Jeremy, thank you for the phone call. I do not. I would love to see it. I just don't. I just think that you've got an inexperienced team that's going into the playoffs for the most part. You got a situation where things grind down to a half-court game in the playoffs. Defensive rotations are key. And you got a very, very talented Golden State team that, again, I think has a lot to prove this season. I would, like I said, I would be happy if they won 2 games. I think that's a win for the franchise.
7 games, I think, is going to be really tough. I think, the Pelicans still have trouble on the road, and playing at Golden State is going to be a monumental task. I believe they've only lost 2 games there this season. It's going to be, I guess, mostly how are the Pelicans mentally when they get back to New Orleans. I think they can get 1 for sure, 2 maybe, but I just don't know that they've got 7 games against Golden State in them.
Right, and how do the Pelicans bounce back from this accomplishment? Right. Do they bounce back from this accomplishment? Because the easiest game to win in a playoff series on the road is the first one. That the opponent can take you a little lightly. You've got some momentum from winning your last game. Now, do we take that momentum and have a great effort in the first game, or do we take a deep breath and relax a little too much and then get off on the wrong foot in Oakland? So how the Pels bounce back from this accomplishment, and it's an accomplishment, and we can all enjoy it, is going to go a long way. It's going to be very difficult to go 7 games, but there is always one series that surprises everybody, and why not us?
Right. Coach, you made a great point. That first game, so critical. You go steal that first game, it's a different series.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. Let's shift gears to the Saints. We'll still take questions for the Pelicans if you have a question or comment. 866-3200. Coach, your overall thoughts on how the Saints have done in the offseason?
They've done some good things, but it's still a work in progress. The Saints are not a better team right now than they were at the end of last year.
You don't think they are?
Not yet, because the draft has a lot to do with what's going on. The Graham trade will be a successful trade if pick number 31 is a player who contributes and contributes greatly. The Kenny Stills trade will be a successful trade if that third-round pick is another contributing player along with Danielle Ellaby. So it's still a work in progress. How well they do in the draft is going to be so important. Of course, I mean, that's the NFL. But the Graham trade right now, Max Unger is a terrific player. That is a huge upgrade at the center position. Got to still do something at left guard. But trading a all-pro tight end for our Pro Bowl tight end for a Pro Bowl center, that's close to being even. So what they do with pick 31 is going to be just so important. And they've taken Kenny Stills, who was a 5th-round pick, made it into a 3rd-round pick, and probably another starter because the Saints are not good at inside linebacker right now. So the Saints are not better right now than they were at the end of last year. But give them 2 more weeks, and let's see the results of the draft, and then we'll have a much better handle on the future of this team.
Bradley, same question.
They've set themselves up to be better, But the thing that Sean Payton always says about draft picks is, you got to give them 2 or 3 years to really figure out whether it was a good draft class or not. I don't know that they really want and have that time right now to give them that 3-year window. So, they still need a receiver. I think they're still thin there. They still need to beef up the offensive line a little bit. They're going to need another inside linebacker. The needs are still there, but they've positioned themselves to a point where I think they are in a better place to go best pick available than, all right, we have to get this position. Right. So it's a deep receiver draft, so I think they'll be all right there. This team has done well at finding guys in the middle rounds, so they've set themselves up well. Are they better right now? I would agree with Coach that I wouldn't go right now and say, yeah, they're way better.
Let's talk about the draft. Bradley just alluded to it. Your thoughts on what they've done in free agency and how that affects what they're going to do during the draft itself.
I think we can be fairly well assured that the Saints are not going to stay at 13 and 31 in the first round. They have been known to wheel and deal and to make something happen, and I'm very confident that the same thing is going to happen. And here's the reason why. They could take the best player available wherever they're at. There's that many holes on this football team. There's only 17 or 18 real first-round draft graded players coming into the draft. So just because you're drafted in the first round doesn't mean you're a first-round player as well. But the 13th pick has got to be an impact player. There's no question about that. But the Saints need to be very good at picking out a specific player and then drafting that player in the right place. If they stay at 13, somebody who's a top 10 player is going to fall to them. That happens all the time, specifically because you're going to have 2 quarterbacks up in the beginning who are always overrated. Somebody's going to fall to them if they stay there. But you need to really pick a specific player and then do what it takes to get that player, whether it means moving up, if they need to move up, if that player deserves that, or the worst thing you can do is pick somebody who's lower rated and pick them up.
Right.
Don't pick the 20th player because you need a cornerback at the 13th. Okay, that's when you start moving down if you can find a trade partner to be able to do that. So much of what has got to happen in the draft is the maneuver to get specific players that they have identified. I feel confident that if there's any way that they can get White from West Virginia, if there's any way they can get up to Amari Cooper, they would love to be able to do that. They may or may not be able to do that depending on how things start falling. There's some edge rushers they certainly would love to be able to have as well. But you identify a player and you go ahead and maneuver yourself to get that player. Don't just take a position, especially because need is a terrible evaluator, and you can't be desperate for a position. You've got to take a player who can contribute.
That's interesting, Coach, because it was one of the questions that I have. Trade up, target a certain player, stay put, move back, acquire more picks because you have so many holes. And, I would be leaning toward maybe going the opposite of what you're saying. Maybe, again, I understand that there are only about 18 to 20 players that are considered first-round grade. But with so many needs to be able to plug in on this team that again, you may be forced to be able to try to take the best player available. But we do know that Sean Payton's MO has always been, I like that guy. I'm going to do what I can do to go get that guy. What's your thoughts, Bradley? What do you think that their mindset is now going into this draft? Because I think they're going to be a much more focused front office than they were last year for the draft.
It's funny you mention it because I was just thinking to myself that, for so long this group has really lived off 2006 and the success they had there. And I know we've talked about this before, that I looking back on it, they haven't really been all that good at drafting. It's not been their strength.
The stats show, again, two drafts, 6 and 13. Yep. Other than that, average of 2 players per draft that have made an impact on this team. Again, as I've mentioned, supplemented by undrafted free agents.
Right. So, but the one thing that sticks out to me is everything they've done this offseason, between front office moves, between trades, between cutting players. This is, use the right word, this is a focused staff. They are not willing anymore to live off of what they did. They know that they have to do something different. I think you're going to see a staff and some moves and some picks that give you the idea that maybe they've put some thought into this. Not that they didn't put thought into it before, but they've really kind of sat down and looked and weighed the pros and cons and done the proper research. I think that, getting Jeff Ireland in there really gets a fresh set of eyes in the front office and really gets a different mindset that maybe freshens things up. So I think this may end up being a better draft than they've had in the last couple of years, just because it's focus. It's all about focus and knowing what you want.
The draft choices have got to make impacts right away. One way, contribute at least. Your first-round draft choice have got to be impact players. Your second and third round have got to be able to contribute in some way, and then you hope to be able to hit on some of the lower ones. It's shown historically that you turn the entire roster over, except for the quarterback position, every 4 years. 4 to 5 years. You go 20 to 25% of your roster changes every year. So when you're looking at draft picks, if you have 4 of your draft choices make it to their second contract, you have had a great draft, because that's the nature of the NFL, that there's constant turnover, constant changing as you go forward. So as we mentioned, you don't have 3 years anymore, because now your second contract's coming up. Right. And that's all. If you get 2 that make it to the second contract, you've done okay. 3, better than average. 4, you've had an exceptional draft. So they've got to make an impact right away, because not for long is indeed what NFL stands for.
And Coach, I'll take it a step further. It's about also drafting players. You hold on to them as long as you can, but do they have the ability to catch on with other teams once they leave you? Okay, and that's when you go back to 06 and you talk about the early years. Look, we've been around long enough to see Saints teams where they'd cut somebody and they were going to bag groceries. Okay, but for a long time, those players were very attractive to other teams. Lately, I don't know if you can say that. Of course, they've had some free agents that made an impact on other teams, but I think that the lifeblood of this team is the draft. They've failed at that for the most part. And again, really kind of living, as you mentioned, off 06 and a lot of these players that made an impact on that 09 championship team. And we've seen kind of a changing of the guard here going forward. What about the quarterback position? It's pretty obvious, I think, to all of us. Breeze will be here, and I think they're going to ride him until they can't ride him anymore. But is this the draft where maybe they look at a quarterback, Bradley?
I think they have to start looking at one. I don't know if there's a guy in this draft that you really say, yeah, he's going to be the guy that can really replace Drew, that we're confident in. But you have to start entertaining those thoughts. He's been a little more careless with the ball the last couple of years than we're used to. Part of that, I personally believe is that he didn't have the receivers, first of all, to throw to, and he focused in on one guy, and I think it's pretty easy for a defense to figure out where Jimmy Graham's going to be.
Plus lack of protection as well.
Plus lack of protection. I think all of that plays into it. So, you look at his struggles last year, and once you start peeling away the layers, well, it's not all on him. So I think he has a little more time left than we all thought. I think the Saints are, like you said, going to ride him, but this is probably the year you start to really entertain thoughts of we got to look at our future.
If it's a can't-miss guy that you really like, maybe you do. But, Coach, you and I have talked about this on the show before. That clock's running, man. You get a guy, you sign him to a 4-year deal, you keep Breeze for 3 more years, 4 more years, and all of a sudden, that young guy you had on the bench, maybe he's playing for somebody else.
All you have to do is look at New England and see how many other quarterbacks are playing throughout the league that they're constantly trying to find the next quarterback. If it's a draft choice, you've got to make sure you are drafting the quarterback and not a quarterback. It's easy to just take a quarterback. But if you just take a quarterback and you pass on somebody who can help you, then you've made your team worse. So it's a constant search for the quarterback position. Even when you look at the legends of the game, Bill Walsh is the original quarterback guru, and look at how many quarterbacks he missed on. He lucked into Montana in a sense that he thought he was a pretty good quarterback, but certainly not the Hall of Famer that he thought he had. But look at the number of people that he missed on, both when he was at Cincinnati as the offensive coordinator and other places, as well as San Francisco. So it is a tough situation. We don't know who the next one's going to be after Drew, even though I think it's awfully interesting that they haven't extended his contract to try to balance that off a bit. So the only reason that I can think of is that they don't want to extend it, because that's how you make a contract more cap friendly. You get more, I'm going to make your contract more cap friendly by giving you more years, giving you eventually more money, but we're going to spread out the terms of it. Right now, Peyton's contract and Loomis's contract and Breeze's contract all end at the same time.
Well, and that was where I was going next. You look at Breeze, what is it, next year is the last year of this second deal. I think that there is a little situation, I've said it before, that they want to see, okay, we're going to beef up this offensive line. We're going to try to add some talent at receiver. Now we want to see what you got left in the tank. But then from there, I think that, again, next year you look at it, they've bit the bullet this year. They've taken on a lot of dead money. Next year, they're not going to have that dead money. And you'll be in a situation where you ultimately can be able to maybe extend. I don't think he's going to be a $20 million contract in his next a $20 million quarterback in his next contract. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that. But I think they're going to ride Breeze until this regime is either gone or Breeze can't play anymore.
I think they may be married together. I mean, when one leaves, the other may leave. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
And we still don't know what's going to happen with the front office right now in terms of ownership.
No, not at all. But when you really think about it, if Breeze stays through 2016, that's 10 years of Breeze and Peyton. That's a long time in the NFL for one head coach to be in one place. Very few of them last that long
especially
in the same location, especially in today's game. Right. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he moved on. And you know what? And he's given the city something to be proud of.
Yeah, but in Peyton's case, unless ownership changes, you've got the optimum situation. You are the guy. Right. You make the decisions. It's your team. You've got that Super Bowl, and you've got that for life. I mean, again, you get a pass on a lot of things. Look, the media is criticizing this city as being too soft. Well, for a long time, it was hard for some of these young reporters to go out there and take this team to task because they had that big silver trophy in there, and you could live off of that for a few years. I think the bloom is off the rose on that now, and these guys are back to show me in this upcoming season.
And I'm certainly expecting that there will be less turmoil in the front office than there was last year. I think that was a big negative. That even with the whole trust, not trust, inheritance, yada, yada, yada stuff, they're out of the building, okay? The kids are out of the building, and the professionals are there running the operation, and now everybody knows who to report to. Because before there was some divided loyalties, and in world-class competition, any little negative becomes exponential as you work through the team, because everything better be functioning right, because out of 32 other teams, somebody's going to have it working the right way. So you're exactly right. Peyton is fully in charge. He and Loomis, no divided loyalties. Here's how we're going to do it. And I believe you're exactly right with Jeff Ireland. That's a lot of what happens in this draft is going to depend on Jeff Ireland, who is exactly in the position he needs to be in, and that's college evaluation.
Peyton, we only got about 2 minutes left. Peyton said that all his moves were calculated and with the intentions of upgrading the defense. If he moved a player from a position, he feels like he's got somebody to step in. You buy that?
I don't know that I buy fully anything that Sean Payton says. I don't know that I buy fully anything that any coach says. It's just the nature of the business. They're going to say what they think is don't look at me that way. They're going to say what they think is best.
That coach speak that you guys know.
Exactly. They're going to say what they think they need to say at the time and to cover themselves best.
And especially right now, where lying is not only tolerated this time of year, but encouraged.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why, again, you can't believe anything that's being put out there.
Exactly.
They're whispering things in their favorite media person's ear, and a lot of that is misinformation that's out there that we'll see. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they go forward. I think also it'll be interesting to see after the draft is done how big of a player they are in free agency of a lot of those players that when that coach looks around and goes, you know what? I got a young player, he's making less than this guy, and maybe I'm going to get rid of this guy at this point and just eat the rest of the money under the cap. I'll be interested to see if they want to fill some holes now with some veteran guys that, again, may be out there in that second wave of free agency after June 1st.
Yeah, because that's how you get people like Anthony Spencer. Every time you talk about a player, you always have to put the addendum to it, at what price. And they got somebody who may be able to help them, even though it's the same position as Paris Harrelson, who's been a productive player for them. But you're looking at him being able to play defensive end when they're in four-man fronts, and now Cam Jordan becomes a three technique, becomes a defensive tackle in pass rush situations. But he came at the right price. And now you're at that stage of free agency that the price is right.
But you got to be careful not to Champ Bailey the situation.
Oh, no doubt.
Throw in money, even if it's the minimum or whatever it is for a guy that maybe he is past his prime, and that so much of what they did last year had to do with Champ Bailey and thinking that he was going to be the solution, and then he wasn't, and their backfield was horrendous.
Right.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and we talked about that before last year, that at best he was a part-time player, and so it became obvious that they were counting on him for big-time play and didn't have a plan B.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, thanks so much for being with us. Great discussion tonight here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Bradley Handwerger, freelance journalist, and of course, Rick Gaille with WGSO Radio and Sportsnola.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Now also on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. Again, that is at 9 p.m. Also, you can catch me on the radio, 9:90 a.m. WGSO, weekdays 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com, catch Bradley's column at ericasher.com, and also you can catch any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports at ericasher.com as well. And if you've got that TuneIn Radio app, check out the radio show on that as well. Special thanks to our guests, again, Bradley Handwerger and Rick Gaille. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Philip Williamson, and Amanda Lyons. Also Kenny Juno, as well as my director, William Hill. My name is Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you right back here next week, 6 p.m. Thursday night for Inside New Orleans Sports. Have a great evening.